All right, today we are doing lesson 2-4, adding decimals. And as we previewed in the previous lessons, when we add digits, we always need to line them up in place value, whether they're whole numbers or decimals. So we're going to be doing old school. Mr. Davidson has 2 stacks of potatoes. The first sack weighs 11 and 39 hundredths of a pound. The second sack weighs 14 and 27 hundredths of a pound. How many pounds of potatoes does Mr. Davidson have in all? Solve this any way you choose. And I would go using the traditional addition model. You're going to take the add-ins and line them up in place value order. Remember, you can take a piece of loose leaf paper and put it on its side and use the lines as columns to help you if you're a wiggly writer. We're starting from the smallest place value, 9 plus 7, 16, carry the 1, 3 plus 1 plus 2, 6. Bring our decimal down. We had that nicely lined up, so it just comes right down. 4 plus 1 is 5, and 1 plus 1 is 2. So he has 22 and 66 hundredths of a pound. Be sure you have everything lined up and everything should go well for you. That's the key in this chapter or this section. I can add decimals using the standard algorithm, and that's what we're using, a standard algorithm. Standard just means, the normal way we do it using normal digits and numbers. How is adding decimals like adding whole numbers? We do the same thing in both. We put the digits, we line digits up by the same place value. So both use place value. And we line the values up, add-ins, by place value, and we add within place value. So that's the key. Sometimes we might have to annex a 0 once in a while, but in that example today, in the solvent share, we didn't have to do that. But we will later on. So now you can watch the video, the Sabbath video, or you can follow along with me here, or do both, because they might explain it a little differently. The essential question is, how can you add decimals? The swim team participated in a relay race. The swimmers' times for each leg of the race were recorded in a table. What was the combined time for Caleb and Bradley's legs of the relay race? And when we see that word combined, we know we're going to be adding. And we're looking at Caleb and Bradley. Caleb and Bradley. So the first 2 values is what we're focusing on. So when you come down to step 1, they're going to write the numbers up, lining up the decimal points and annexing zeros if they needed to, which they didn't have to do on this one. Line them up by decimal point. Add the hundredths because that is the smallest value. So you're starting at the far right, adding the hundredths, regrouping if necessary. So 9 plus 9 was 18. So they put the 8 down and carried the 1. And as they continue to add, they have to carry 1 a couple times. Add the tenths, the ones, the tens. Align the decimal point in the sum with the decimal point in the add-ins. Compare the sum to your estimate. And it's really good to estimate before you do anything in math. It's to get your brain going so that it kind of has a sense of what the right answer would be. So if you're estimating 21.49 plus 21.59, you could say 21 plus 21 is 42, so you know the answer is going to be around 42. When we check our answer, it is around 42. That's comparing the sum to your estimate. So that looks good. Andre said the last 2 legs of the race took 3,938 seconds. And you can tell right away that he added right, but he put a comma in there and didn't use the decimal point. So the answer is actually 39.38. So be careful there. So you put a comma in. We're not using commas unless we're increasing our periods, which we're not because we're still in we're in decimals and we're not up to the thousands place. So we don't need any commas. Okay, moving on to another example. Carson ran 7 and 81 hundredths of a mile last week. He ran 14 miles this week. How many miles did he run in the 2 weeks? And this is where we need to make sure we remember to annex our zeros. Remember, we're lining things up by the decimal point and by place value. So when you line this, when you find your two values, your add-ins are 14 and 7.81. And you've got to remember that all whole numbers, every whole number has the invisible decimal after it. So we can actually pop the decimal in and put a couple zeros there to help make sure we're lining things up correctly. Super important. If you don't line things up correctly, your answer is going to be very wonky, and that would not be good. So by lining the decimals up, and annexing zeros, we're able to add our answers. And we're regrouping if necessary. The only regrouping we had was when we went from the ones to, we added 7 and 1 and we got 11, so we had to carry the 1. That's called regrouping. And sometimes teachers in the younger grades call it carrying the 1. But we're in 5th grade now, so we're calling it regrouping. So in the example on page 78, what was the combined time for the two middle legs of the race? So now we're going to have to go back to the data on the previous page, and the combined times of the two middle of the races is, we're going to take Bradley, 21.59, and Vic, 20.35, if I'm reading that right. I'm looking in my teacher manual, and the print is super tiny. 21.59, 20.35. Yep, there we go. So we're going to start with the smallest place value, which is the hundredths place. 9 plus 5 is 14. Carry the 1. 5 plus 1 is 6, plus 3 is 9. 1 plus 0 is 1, and 2 plus 2 is 4. So combining, we have 41 and 94 seconds is our combined total. And then do you know how? This is nicely set up for you, number 2, and that's how you need to set things up in your math notebook. It's very, very difficult to add decimals when they're written horizontally like this. You really need to write them vertically. In number 3, they put the digits for you, but they're making you annex that 0 there. And that's really important to do with addition, so we get some good habits in place when we start subtracting. And so down here, one way you can do it and save a little space is just leave the first value where it is and just write the second value underneath it. Now, that's really hard to see, but you could probably do that in your notebooks better than I can do it here because I have a very wide tip point. I can't get it thinner. So 8.56, and let me try over here, 3.02. And the answer is 8.00, or you can just put 8 for that. All right, so as you continue on, you can continue on the independent practice here, and if you feel confident, you can jump right into the quick check. If you feel like you need some more guided practice, you can go into the buddy work that's been assigned online. But remember, the quick check is something you need to get done, and the buddy work is optional. I hope you have a great day.